When my son said, "Mama, I'll come back soon," I believed him. I believed him the way a child believes the morning will always follow the night. I didn't ask when, I didn't ask how long. I just smiled and said, "Okay, my boy, I'll be waiting." That was the last time I saw him. It's strange, isn't it, how one goodbye can sound so ordinary, yet carry the weight of forever? That day, the house felt smaller after he left. His laughter still echoed in the walls, his slippers still sat near the door. But he was gone. I tried to keep myself busy, folding laundry, watering plants, boiling tea. But every sound reminded me of him. The kettle's whistle became his voice, and the quiet after dinner became the silence of waiting. He had just started a new life in the city, a new job, a new apartment, and soon a new family. He told me, "Don't worry, Ma, I'll visit every month, I promise." And I held on to that word promise like a lifeline, because when you live alone, words are what keep you warm. They become your company when everyone else moves on. Every Sunday, I would prepare his favorite curry, just in case he surprised me. I'd even set an extra plate at the table, one for him, one for the hope he might walk through the door. But as the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, that plate gathered more dust and food. I'm not angry. People change. Life gets busy. But sometimes I wonder if he knows how quiet it gets here, if he remembers how I used to hum when I cooked, if he realizes that I still fold his old shirts, even though he hasn't worn them in years. He promised he'd visit, but he never came back. And in that silence, I learned something. Sometimes, love doesn't fade. It just waits quietly, hoping someone remembers. I still remember the sound of his footsteps every morning. He used to wake up before me, something that surprised everyone. He'd tiptoe into the kitchen, trying not to wake me. But no matter how quiet he was, I always knew. A mother's heart never sleeps completely. He'd make tea, too strong, too sweet, and bring it to my bedside with a grin. "Ma, wake up, it's morning already." And I'd laugh and say, "You can't fool me, it's barely sunrise." He was my only child. After his father passed when he was 12, it was just the two of us. We had little, but somehow we never felt poor. Our world was built from the small things: morning tea, shared laughter, long talks over dinner. He was my pride, my reason to keep going. People used to say, "You've raised a good boy." And I'd smile quietly because I knew. Yes, I did. He was gentle, respectful, thoughtful in ways even adults weren't. When he was in college, he'd call me every evening. Just small things. "Ma, I had exams today." "Ma, I ate lunch weight." "Ma, I saw a stray puppy and thought of you." Those little words became the rhythm of my life. Even when I was tired from work, cooking in other people's houses, washing dishes, ironing clothes, his voice could make my heart feel light again. He'd say, "One day, Ma, I'll take care of you. You won't have to work so hard." And I believed him, not because I needed him to, but because I knew his love was pure. Our evenings were the best part of the day. We'd sit near the window, sharing dinner together. I always asked him about school, about his dreams. He used to say he wanted to build something big, not for himself, but so he could make me proud. One night, he said something I still remember. "Ma, when I get a job, I'll buy you a house with a garden.
You can plant all the flowers you want. You'll never feel lonely again. I smiled and told him, Son, I don't need a big house. Just make sure your heart stays kind. He laughed, pretending to be serious. Deal, Ma. A kind heart and a small garden. That's all I'll need. Those were the moments I replay in my mind now, when the house feels too quiet. I imagine us sitting together again, the smell of curry in the air, his voice filling every empty corner. Transition. Sound of a bus, fading city noise. Time passing. Years went by faster than I expected. He graduated, got his first job in the city, and suddenly, my little boy became a man in a suit. The day he left for work, I cried in the kitchen after he walked out. Not because I was sad, but because I was proud. He turned and waved from the gate, shouting, "Don't cry, Ma. I'll visit every weekend." And I smiled through my tears. I believed him then, the same way I still believe in love now, completely, without conditions. In the beginning, he did visit. Every weekend, like he said, he'd bring sweets from the city, tell me stories about his office, and ask me to make his favorite lentil soup. He'd say, "Your food tastes better than anything in the city." And I'd reply, "That's because I cook with love, not recipes." We'd laugh, and for a few hours, the distance between us disappeared.
He'd sleep in his old room, the one with the peeling blue paint and posters he'd put up as a boy. Sometimes I'd stand at the door and just watch him sleep. He looked peaceful, like the little boy who used to fall asleep holding my hand. Then, as time went on, his visits became less frequent. He called one day and said, "Ma, I've been busy with work. I'll come next month, okay?" I said, "Of course, son. Don't worry. Work hard." But after that, a month turned into 2, then 3. I started keeping my phone closer. Every message notification made my heart skip. I'd wonder if it was him. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. But even when it wasn't, I pretended it was. The neighbors would ask, "Your son must be doing well in the city," and I'd nod proudly. "He's very busy," I'd say. That word, busy, became my shield. It covered the silence, the distance, the loneliness. Then came the day he told me he'd met someone. Her name was Ananya. He spoke of her with such joy that I could almost see his smile through the phone. He said she was kind, thoughtful, and strong-willed. "She reminds me of you, Ma," he added. And just like that, I felt something warm bloom inside me. I was happy for him, truly, because every mother dreams of seeing her child loved, cared for, and happy. Still, a small part of me whispered a quiet fear. Will she love him the way I do? Will she understand the softness in his heart? But I kept those thoughts to myself. When he brought her home to meet me, I saw how her eyes lit up when she looked at him, and I thought, yes, she truly loves my boy. She was polite, respectful, even shy. She helped me serve dinner and complimented my cooking. "You have a lovely home," she said. I smiled and replied, "It's lovely because he grew up here." That night, after they left, I sat on the porch for a long time. The moon was bright, the wind soft, and I prayed silently for their happiness. I said, if she brings light to his life, let her always stay by his side. Their wedding was small and simple, just family and a few close friends. He looked so handsome in his sherwani, standing tall beside her. When he came to touch my feet for blessings, I placed my hand on his head and whispered, "Be kind, be patient, and never forget where your roots are." He looked up and said, "Never, Ma.
I promise." At the time, I thought promises lasted forever. Now I know, sometimes they're only as strong as memory. After the wedding, he moved into a new apartment with Ananya. I helped them pack, folded his shirts, wrapped the framed photos, and tucked small notes in between his clothes. Little reminders like, eat on time and don't skip breakfast. He laughed when he found them later. "Ma, you treat me like I'm still a kid." And I said softly, "You'll always be my child, even when your hair turns gray." He hugged me, and in that hug, I felt both joy and fear, because love always carries both. After they left, the house became quieter than ever, but I didn't complain. I told myself, he's happy now. That's what matters. Every evening, I'd look at the phone, waiting for it to ring, and when it didn't, I'd tell myself, he must be busy, newly married life, lots to adjust to. Sometimes I'd cook too much food by mistake, forgetting it was just me now. I'd save the leftovers and think, if he visits this week, I'll reheat it for him. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months, and my table stayed set for one. People think loneliness is loud, but it isn't. It's quiet. It's the sound of spoons clinking in an empty kitchen, the creak of a chair that used to hold two, the whisper of wind through an open window when no one answers your hello. Still, I stayed patient, because that's what mothers do. We wait, not because we're forgotten, but because love never learns to give up. He promised he'd visit, and I kept that promise alive in my heart, like a small candle, flickering but unbroken. It began with small things. Things so simple, you'd think they didn't matter. A missed phone call, a message seen but not answered, a visit postponed with kind excuses. "Next weekend, Ma," he'd say. And I'd reply, "Of course, son. Don't worry." But every next weekend became another week without him. At first, I told myself not to take it to heart. He was newly married, settling into his new life. Every couple needs time to adjust. But still, the silence between us began to grow roots, slowly, quietly, almost kindly, the way vines cover a wall before you notice. One evening, I called him. It had been over a month since his last visit. When he picked up, I could hear voices and laughter behind him. "Ma, I'm at dinner with some friends. Can I call you back later?" I said softly, "Of course. Enjoy yourself." I waited all night, but the phone never rang again. That night, I sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass like little rivers of memory. I wasn't angry. I just felt forgotten. The next morning, I made his favorite breakfast, idlis with coconut chutney. I don't even know why. Maybe habit? Maybe hope. I sat at the table with 2 plates, then sighed and put one away. The house had started to forget his footsteps, and that scared me more than anything. There was a time he'd call me every evening. We'd talk about the most ordinary things, weather, food, people. But now, weeks would pass without a single word. When I did call, sometimes Ananya would answer instead. "Hello, Ma," she'd say politely. Her voice was calm but distant, as if she were always in a hurry. "How are you feeling these days?" I'd tell her I was fine, even when I wasn't. She'd say, "That's good. We've both been so busy, but we'll visit soon." And that word, soon, began to sound like a door that never opened.
One afternoon, I decided to surprise them. I packed a few home-cooked dishes, his favorite curry, some sweets, and took the early bus to the city. It had been nearly 3 months since I last saw him. The journey was long, but my heart was full of excitement.
When I reached their apartment, I stood outside the door for a few seconds. I could hear soft music from inside, and then her voice, gentle but firm. I knocked lightly. After a pause, she opened the door. Her smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh, Ma, you came," she said, surprised. "Yes," I smiled. "I wanted to see you both. I made some food." She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then said, "Come in, Ma, please." Inside, the house was neat, elegant, but it didn't smell like home. It smelled like candles, perfume, not cooking or laughter. "Where's he?" I asked. "He went to the office. He'll be back in the evening," she replied. Her tone was polite, but something in her eyes made me feel like I'd come unannounced, like I was a guest, not family. She served me tea, and we talked about small things. Weather, work, recipes, all polite, all distant. I tried to fill the silence, but it was heavy. Then she said something that stayed with me. "Ma, it's not easy managing everything, work, home, and his schedule. He's under a lot of pressure, so I try to keep him calm. You know how emotional he gets sometimes." I nodded, though her words stung a little. She said it as if my love might be a burden to him now. I smiled and replied softly, "I understand, Beta. I just wanted to see him for a while." She gave me a faint smile. "I'm sure he'll be happy you came." But when he returned that evening, his expression was a mix of joy and guilt. "Ma, you came all the way?" he said, hugging me quickly.
"Yes, son. I missed you," I said, patting his back. He laughed nervously. "You should have told me. I'd have picked you up." I wanted to say, I didn't want to wait for another weekend that never comes. But instead I said, "Next time, I'll call first." We had dinner together, but I could feel the strain in the air. Ananya smiled politely, but she kept checking her phone. He tried to start conversations, but his words were short, distracted. It wasn't the same. That night, I stayed in their guest room. It was spotless, cold, unfamiliar. I lay awake, listening to the muffled sound of their voices from the other room. They weren't arguing, just talking softly, but I could feel a wall between us that hadn't been there before. At breakfast, I tried to help in the kitchen, but Ananya said gently, "It's okay, Ma, please sit. I'll handle it." I nodded, watching her move quickly, efficiently. She was good at it. Everything was perfect, organized, planned. Still, I missed the messy warmth of our old kitchen, where laughter and smell of curry mixed with stories and songs. When I left that afternoon, I hugged her and said, "You take care of him for me." She smiled. "Of course, Ma." He walked me to the bus stop. We didn't say much. Just before I boarded, he said, "I'll come visit soon, Ma. Promise." I smiled and said, "I know, my boy." But deep down, I knew promises can fade if not watered with effort, just like flowers left too long without sunlight. After that visit, things changed even more. Our calls became shorter.
Sometimes he'd call while driving or between meetings. "Ma, I'll talk later, okay?" And I'd say, "Of course, son. Stay safe." Ananya rarely called. When she did, it was brief. Sometimes I'd send photos of my garden, flowers I'd planted because he once said he'd build me one. She'd reply, "So beautiful, Ma. You have such a green thumb." Then silence again. It wasn't coldness, it was distance, the kind that grows from different lives moving in different directions. Then one day, I fell sick. Just a fever, but enough to make me weak. The doctor told me to rest. I thought about calling him, but hesitated. He always sounded tired. After 2 days, my neighbor came to check on me. "Did your son know you're sick?" she asked. I shook my head. No need to worry him." But that night when the fever rose again, I picked up the phone. My hands trembled slightly as I called. He answered after a few rings. "Ma, is everything okay?" I said softly, "Just a fever, nothing serious." His voice tensed. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I didn't want to disturb you, Beta. You have work." He sighed. "Ma, please take care. I'll come this weekend, okay?" And again, I believed him. The weekend came, but he didn't. He sent a message. "Ananya's cousin came to visit. Couldn't leave. Will come next week." I read that message 3 times, then turned off my phone. I wasn't angry, just tired. Sometimes I think love and patience are the same thing. You wait and wait, believing they'll remember, and even when they don't, you still find a reason to forgive. Months passed like that. My health improved, but my heart stayed heavy. Every small thing reminded me of him. The sound of a car outside, the scent of his old cologne, the sight of a mother walking with her grown son at the market. I'd smile politely at them, but inside I'd whisper, "Don't take this moment for granted." Scene shift. New Year's Eve. Faint fireworks, clock ticking. That year, he didn't come for the holidays either. He sent a package instead. A beautiful shawl and a note that said, "Happy New Year, Ma. Hope you're warm." I held that shawl close to my chest and whispered, "I'd rather have your hug than any gift." The neighbors came by to celebrate, but I stayed home. I cooked his favorite sweets anyway. Then I sat by the window, watching fireworks light up the empty sky, and I realized something. You can love someone with all your heart and still have to learn how to live without them. There comes a time when waiting starts to feel different. It's no longer filled with hope, just quiet acceptance. Like sitting by a door that you know won't open, but still keeping the light on, just in case. For me, that moment came one late winter morning. The air was cold and still. I woke up early to make tea and noticed the sunlight falling gently through the curtains. It was beautiful, golden, calm, but it also made the room feel emptier than usual. The house had become too quiet, too neat, too still. No slippers by the door, no laughter in the air, no half-finished cup of tea on the counter. Everything was in its place except him. That morning, I opened the old box in my cupboard. Inside were the letters and small notes he had written me years ago, birthday cards, college letters, even one from his first job. I ran my fingers over the words, feeling his handwriting like a whisper of the past. One note said, "Ma, I'll always be there for you." Another, "Don't ever think you're alone. And I smiled, even as my eyes filled with tears, because I knew he had meant every word then, but life had changed. Later that week, I received a call. It was from Ananya. "Ma," she said politely, "we're shifting to another city. He's got a promotion, a big opportunity." I froze for a moment. "Oh, that's wonderful, Beta," I said softly. "When are you leaving?" "In 2 weeks. We've been so busy packing, I almost forgot to call."
Forgot. Such a simple word, yet it can hold so much pain. I forced a smile into my voice. "I'm happy for both of you," I said. "Please tell him I'm proud of him." She paused. "I will, Ma, and we'll come visit before we go." "Of course," I whispered. But deep down, something told me they wouldn't. After the call ended, I stood near the window, watching the wind move through the trees. Leaves were falling, one after another. And I realized that's how people drift too, quietly, naturally, without anyone meaning harm. 2 weeks passed. They didn't come. No call, no message, just silence. I told myself they must be busy with the move. But the day they were supposed to leave, I woke up before sunrise and sat by the window. My heart was restless, like a bird trapped inside a cage of hope. By afternoon, I knew they were gone. I imagined them at the airport, his hand on her shoulder, their laughter, their plans, the excitement of new beginnings. I pictured him glancing at his phone for a moment, seeing my number, and then putting it back in his pocket, thinking, I'll call her later. But later never came.
That evening, I cooked dinner for myself, just rice and lentils. I ate slowly, one bite at a time, listening to the sound of the clock echo through the empty house. Each tick felt like a reminder. Time moves, whether love follows or not. After dinner, I went to his room. It still smelled faintly of him, a mix of cologne, dust, and memory. I sat on the edge of his bed and whispered, "You said you'd visit, my boy. You promised." For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not loudly, not in anger, just quiet tears that slipped down without resistance. It wasn't heartbreak, not exactly. It was something softer, the ache of realizing that the world had gone on without me. A few days later, the postman came. He handed me a small envelope. It was from him, a short letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Ma, we've moved safely. The new place is nice. The city is bigger than I imagined, and work has already started. I'm sorry I couldn't come to say goodbye in person. Things got really busy at the end. I promise we'll visit soon. Please take care of your health. Love, always." There it was again. That word, promise. So gentle, so kind, yet so empty now. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box with the others. Then I whispered to myself, "He's safe. He's happy. That's enough."
But even as I said it, my heart disagreed. Because love doesn't just want safety, it wants closeness. It wants the sound of a familiar voice saying, "I missed you, Ma." Months passed. The seasons changed. The mango tree outside my window began to flower again, and every evening I would sit under it, watching the sunset with a cup of tea. Sometimes I'd talk to the wind, pretending it could carry my words to him. Did you eat, my boy? Are you sleeping well? Do you still hum when you cook dal? It was silly, maybe, but those small talks with the wind became my comfort. Then one afternoon, my neighbor's son came home after years away. He brought gifts, laughter, and a loud voice that filled their house. I could hear them laughing through the open window, and for a brief moment, I felt joy, genuine joy for them. But it was followed by something heavier, the quiet realization that maybe my son would never return like that. A few days later, my phone rang. It was a video call, his name flashing on the screen. I answered quickly, smiling. "Ma," he said, his face filling the screen. "Oh, my son," I said. "You look so grown." He laughed, a little nervously. Ananya appeared behind him, waving. "Hi, Ma," she said brightly. I smiled at her. "How are you both?" "We're good," he said. "Just so busy. The new job's demanding." I nodded, though my eyes searched his face now. There were faint lines near his eyes now. He looked tired, but happy. We talked for a few minutes about their apartment, the city, the weather. And then, as the conversation began to fade, he said, "Ma, I'll visit soon. Maybe next month." I smiled. "I'll keep your room ready." When the call ended, I looked at the empty screen. His smile was still fresh in my mind, but so was the distance in his eyes, the kind of distance that no call could bridge. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. It hit me then, slowly and gently. The truth I had been avoiding for so long. My son loved me. Of that I had no doubt, but love, I realized, changes shape. It stretches, moves, finds new homes in new hearts. It doesn't vanish, it just stops returning the same way. He had built a new world. A world where my voice no longer filled the silence. And that was okay. Painful, yes, but okay. Because that's what motherhood is. Loving someone enough to set them free, even when their wings take them far away from you. The next morning, I opened the windows wide. Fresh air rushed in, cool and sweet. For the first time, I didn't wait by the phone. Instead, I sat at the table with 1 cup of tea and peace in my heart. I whispered softly, "Wherever you are, my boy, I'm still here, and I'm still proud of you." And in that quiet moment, the loneliness didn't hurt as much. It was still there, but it had softened into something gentler, something almost like grace. The days that followed were quiet, but not the kind of quiet that feels empty. This quiet was peaceful, like the pause after a long storm, when the world finally exhales. For a long time, I had measured my happiness by my son's presence, his voice, his visits, his promises. But now, I was beginning to understand something deeper. Maybe love doesn't always come in visits or phone calls. Maybe love can live quietly, in memories, in prayers, in the way we still care for someone even when they're far away. That week, I started tidying the house again. Not out of habit, but as a way to make space for peace. I opened the windows wide, let sunlight spill into every corner.
I packed away the old clothes I had been keeping for him, folded them carefully, one by one. The shirt he wore on his college graduation day, the sweater I knitted when he was 12, the scarf I made for his first winter job. Each piece was a memory stitched with love. I didn't throw them away, just placed them in a wooden chest near my bed. Because love doesn't need to be erased. It only needs to be kept in its right place. As I worked, I found myself smiling, not because the pain was gone, but because it had softened into gratitude. Gratitude that I had known such love at all.
One afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. D'Souza, came by with a basket of fruits. She's a kind woman, always cheerful. She sat at my kitchen table and said, "You've been so quiet lately. Are you all right, dear?" I smiled and poured her some tea. "I'm fine," I said softly. "I've just been thinking, learning how to live a little differently." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "You're a strong woman," she said. I laughed gently. "I wasn't. Not always. But I'm trying." We talked for hours that day. And when she left, I realized how good it felt to let another person in again. For so long, my heart had been locked around the thought of my son. I hadn't noticed the people still around me. Neighbors, friends, the milkman who always greeted me kindly, the little girl who smiled every morning as she walked to school. The world hadn't forgotten me. I had just stopped looking at it. That evening, I took a walk down the street. The sky was a soft orange, the air cool and still. Children were playing near the park. Their laughter echoed, pure, innocent, alive. I stopped for a moment to watch them. One little boy fell and started crying. His mother ran to him, dusted off his knees, and held him close until the tears stopped. It reminded me of when my son was little, how he'd cry over small things, and I'd hold him the same way until his sobs turned into sniffles and then into laughter. For a brief moment, I closed my eyes and smiled. That memory didn't hurt anymore. It felt like a gentle light inside me, a reminder that I had lived those moments fully, and no one could ever take them away. A few weeks later, I received another letter. It was from him again, but this time it was longer. "Ma, I hope you're doing well. I've been meaning to call more often, but things have been very busy here. Ananya and I talk about you often. She says we should bring you to live with us. The city is a little noisy, but I think you'd like it once you settle in. Please write back and tell me how you're doing. I miss your cooking. Love always, your son." I read that letter again and again. Each word felt like a small bridge, a connection trying to rebuild itself. But instead of rushing to call him, I sat down with a pen and wrote back. "My dear son, I'm happy you're doing well. Don't worry about me. This house has enough laughter, even when it's quiet. I've been learning how to take care of myself again, and it feels good. If you ever visit, your room is still waiting, but don't come out of guilt, my boy. Come only when your heart truly wants to. Love always, Ma." I sealed the letter, placed it in an envelope, and sent it the next morning. And as I dropped it into the postbox,
I felt something shift inside me, a release, like letting go of a heavy breath I had been holding for years. Months passed. He didn't visit, not right away, but that was all right, because something inside me had already healed.
I started a small routine: morning walks, tending to the garden, reading books I'd always put aside. Sometimes I even joined Mrs. D'Souza for her prayer meetings on Sundays. Slowly, my life began to fill with new colors again. Not the bright ones of youth, but the soft, peaceful tones of acceptance. One morning, I woke to the sound of knocking on my door. It was early, around 7 a.m. I opened it, and there he was, my son. He looked tired, but his eyes were full of warmth. Before I could speak, he stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't a long hug, just enough to say everything words couldn't. "Ma," he whispered, "I missed you." I smiled, holding him close. "I know, my boy. I missed you too." Ananya stood behind him, holding a small bag of fruits. "Ma," she said softly, "we thought it was time to come home." I looked at both of them, and for the first time in years, my house felt alive again. We spent that day cooking together, laughing, sharing stories of the city, of old memories, of small things. There was no apology, no big speech, just love quietly returned. And that was enough. That evening, after they left to visit some friends, I sat by the window again, the same spot where I had waited for so many years. But this time, I wasn't waiting. I was simply sitting, grateful, calm, and whole.
The stars outside shimmered faintly, and the wind carried a soft scent of rain. I thought about life, how it tests us in ways we don't expect, how sometimes the people we love drift away, not because they stop loving us, but because life pulls them in new directions. And yet, love never truly disappears. It changes, it matures, it finds quiet ways to come back. That night I whispered to the sky, "Thank you for bringing my boy back and for teaching me how to be strong while waiting." Sometimes life doesn't give us the endings we imagined. It gives us quieter ones, the kind that don't make noise, but stay with you, like a soft echo in the heart. I learned that forgiveness isn't always about others. Sometimes it's about forgiving yourself for holding on too tightly, for expecting too much, for not knowing when to let go. Now, when I make tea in the morning, I pour 2 cups, one for me, one for memory. I look out at the world, and instead of waiting, I simply live. Because love, in its truest form, doesn't need to be returned every day. It just needs to be remembered. And maybe that's what peace really is. Not the absence of loss, but the quiet acceptance that love was once here and that it still lives within us.